Okay, I made this video for two reasons. The first one is almost kind of like as a friend, like, hey, come over, let's mess with a couple synths that just came out and see how we feel about them. Let's see what these things can do, and also just like check it out. Here's my process. This is my general philosophy on making sounds using synths. So that was like one part of it, which I hope people find helpful because I love doing that. Like when a new piece of software comes out, I usually like immediately hit up a couple of my friends like Matt Zoe and a couple others. Mostly Matt. Me and Matt go back and forth a lot actually. Uh, but yeah, the other side of this was kind of like almost like a reaction to some something I've been feeling a lot lately on the internet, which is other people's opinion kind of getting inside your head and making you feel a certain way. Uh, Almost kind of like slowly but surely, it's like before you know it, you'll be in a conversation, you'll actually like blurt out somebody else's opinion. I've been trying to be more aware of that because as a musician, I think it's really important to form your own opinion based off of your own experiences. That's like how you come up with your own sound and style. And uh, it's also kind of how you don't end up like lost in this music business. There's so many people that they look at experimenting and it's like taking time out to experiment, taking time out to learn some new tools. I think that that's flipped around. Like when all of us first started, it was all about experimenting. I mean, we were taking time out from our day jobs and things like that to experiment with software and music and stuff. And now it's like you find yourself back in that position where it's like, oh man, I got to bust my ass and get to work. You're like, but I really would love to take some time out to experiment. It's like, man, this is maybe part of this is kind of a reminder to myself and to everybody else that might check this out is that the experimenting part is like, it should be part of the fun, of making music. And I get it, like I totally get this idea that it's a race somehow. And we got to stay on target and we got to stay on task. And, you open up social media and you see maybe people that are more successful in your mind than you are, like telling you something. And you're like, oh shit, maybe he's telling me or she's telling me what to do here, like whether they know it or not. Here's an example of somebody being more successful and maybe I should do it that way. But time and time again, it's always the person that has the really unique perspective that really stands out. And, and of course, after that, it's like everyone runs and tries to cash in on something that somebody else figured out. And then it starts turning into this game of who can do it more efficiently and bigger. And then then it starts turning into who's got more resources, who's got more money, who's got more connections. And then I think almost instantly, it's like, in an economics sense, like of the diminishing return, it's like every time somebody kind of does the same thing, it becomes less effective. And you can talk about any trend. Some people are gonna be like, this guy's way over the top here. But I'm sure there's a lot of people that are hearing what I'm saying right now and they're like, yeah, I totally get it. I totally get what this guy's saying. But I digress. I'm not going to go too far down that. This isn't a podcast. This is, I guess, a tutorial, and maybe just like I said, like a friend coming over to talk about synths. This shit's fun to me, and it actually pissed me off. I was mad at myself for starting to build an opinion based on what everybody else was saying about these synths, because now that I've gone down that rabbit hole, I really like all three of these synths, and I find them all useful. And sometimes just for the sake of it, one day you might say, "Let me open up this other synth," because I find myself stuck in a loop doing the same thing over and over again. And maybe you see something in the process of me messing around with this stuff and showing you some things that you're like, yo, that is really cool. I bet I can make some cool stuff. Or that makes me think of this. Or imagine doing a track that, utilizes that one idea there, that might be really fun. That's the spirit of also why I made this. So I hope you really enjoy what I got to say here. And if you have any questions, comments, hit me up. Like, drop me a message. I'll try to respond. I'm always really interested, and I always learn stuff from people leaving comments. It's really, I think, overall a really healthy thing for everybody. And I do the same kind of shit too. I always kind of ask questions on people's videos and stuff. So anyway, big up for watching this video. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you come up with something cool. Peace. All right, let's talk about phase plant here. I think the easiest way to go about this is for me to just make a patch, and as I go along, we'll talk about it. And I'll explain how things are working here. So up here in the top left, we have the generator section, and this is a modular setup. So right now I'm pressing keys on my keyboard and there's no sound coming out. It's because we need to create a generator to generate some kind of a noise. And we have a couple options here: analog, noise, sampler, and wavetable. Since we're talking about wavetable synths today, we'll create a wavetable. And what do we have here? We got a couple things going on. We have a group that's holding all this stuff together. Inside that group is a wavetable generator. And underneath is output that's got an envelope here. So it's a little saw. So attack, decay, and release. Most of us should be familiar with how an envelope works. Not, you gotta figure that one out for yourself. It's pretty easy. Usually the first thing that I'll think about after I got this thing going is like, all right, let's get some movement in the wavetable. So there's a bunch of different ways to do that. I usually just jump down here to the modulator section and create one of these things here, typically an LFO. And you'll see this little orange plus sign. Click on that, and let's map it to the frame section. So now if I click and drag this little circle, I can change the depth of this sine wave. And I can change it to sync to the host, speed it up. And I can even go in this editor here and start drawing a cool envelope, If I right click, I can straighten it out, make it into teeth if I want. I can snap it to the grid, I can unsnap it, I can change the resolution, all that kind of stuff. Probably familiar with that. I don't know how useful that shape is, but if I want to, I can go and pick one of these guys. Sine. Let's keep it simple. I can create all different kinds, like I said. These are all worth messing around with. You can explore all that stuff for yourself and see what everything does. I'm still working these guys out. These ones are going to attenuate some of these parameters, utility. But yeah, we'll just focus on the LFO for right now. So we got an envelope going and we got an LFO going. But one of the other really cool things about phase plant is that up here in the generator window, we can use other generators to modulate. So for example, let's use like an analog signal. So if I put it in the group, I can hear it. Take it out of the group, I can only hear the wavetable. So what use does it have outside the group? Well, we can map it to, let's say, like the phase, for example. You might also want to be able to hear the analog oscillator and have it modulate phase. Change the wavetable. The other thing that's cool too is you can create effects out here. So out here in the generator section, we can create like distortion. Matters too. Signal flow goes top down. So if I put it before, only going to distort that. If I put it down here, it'll do both. But once again, I could take it out of the group and I could map it to, let's say, the shift on this one. Change like the model. Dial it in harder. So I thought that was cool, you know? I thought that was like a little hint when I saw that in the generator window. It like kind of reminded me, it's like, hey, why don't you try routing instead of using, because you wouldn't think of using distortion as an instrument by itself. So I'm like, why would they put it in the window where I'm trying to build my instrument? Oh, okay, maybe, yeah, I can use it as a modulator. Pretty cool, yeah. So moving on down the line here, if we follow this arrow out of this section, we got this patch kind of slowly but surely getting dialed in over here. We can start adding effects. Really simple, and we'll go through this real quick. You can go generator into lane 1, lane 1 goes into lane 2 goes into lane 3, top to bottom, out to the master. And you can route, we'll get into that some other day, but you can route stuff back into the generator window using an auxiliary. Is that right? Yeah. Jeez. I didn't sleep much last night. Utility, you can actually like you can route signals all over the place in here, but we're going to keep it simple today. So yeah, you can add, let's say like more distortion, let's say like some reverb, and then a compressor, let's say. Then I can decide to route things differently. Like say, I want to send this to just straight out to the master. Or, you know, I only want to hit the compressor. Or I want to hit the compressor and the reverb. Or reverb then compressor. And you know what? I actually want everything back again. And if I want, I can move these things around. Just tight delay, how about that, before the compressor. Move the distortion here. Yeah. So you're getting the idea, I hope. Let's dial this in a little bit more by changing this wavetable around. And I'll actually use some of my tables that I'm sharing with Serum, actually. Like, I made all these wavetables in Serum. I'm starting to make some inside Phase Plant too, and we'll get to that right after this. But go through some of the tables and find something cool. Darth Vader. cool. Old school Reese sound. So yeah, hopefully that kind of sparked some level of inspiration. Maybe there's something I was doing where you're like, oh shit, like I need to open this up and fuck with that. But the next part is actually really fun too, and this is more unexplored territory for me. So this next section is going to be the Wavetable editor. So let me take a quick break and then we'll do the Wavetable editor. Editing wavetables. So when you click this little pencil tool, it opens up the Wavetable editor. Back here, you got a bunch of different tools to use. You got like a line tool. Actually, like once you've drawn some lines, you can actually mix together the lines from the initial signal and then the stuff you go over the top. It's pretty cool. You can scribble. You can create wave tools. You can edit the harmonic information and the phase of those harmonics. And it also even has this like filter cutoff, which is, I don't know, it's pretty interesting. Ooh, where I drew. I haven't really used these too much yet, but I'm glad they're there. And you can do similar kinds of things inside Serum as well. But anyway, that was cool that these were there. So one of the kind of peculiar, interesting things that I found out about Faceplant is that there's this interesting kind of like keyframe animator for wavetables. So if I were to just draw in a bunch of points here, see up here, filling in the wavetable as far as I drag this out, filling in all those frames. But if at this point here, I decide that I want to like straighten this out, and more weirdness. All the way to the end. What it's doing. Sorry, I know. And hit done. When I scroll through now, you can see how it animated points in between. If I look at now my wavetable, it's like I got a wavetable. Another cool thing that I found out you can do, and I know you can morph together two single frames inside Serum, but one thing I think that you can do in Faceplant you can't do in Serum is, check it out. If I load, I'm going to load this like organic sounding, it's actually a voice, it's my son's voice. And I made like a little stupid Twitter video where I used his voice as a wavetable. So I saved it and imported it into Faceplant. I love you. He's just saying I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. So yeah, if I load this wavetable, right? I go back here and I select it. If I select all this information here and I go edit, cut, and then I come back out here and I load, let's say, just another wavetable like this bit yelp. It's just like a bit crushed sound. Here, check it out. And then I go back to the editor and like, somewhere along the line here, I just go edit, paste. I paste Ezra back in there and then I hit done. It's like now I got this weird hybrid wavetable. It's going to jump from one sound to the other. So check it out. It goes, we only got 256 frames to work with. So it like cut at that point all the way to the end. So it's going to be like half of one and half of the other. Whoops. Oh. Here, let me double click this. All right. So now we got like half and half, but then if I go back again and I go into this Spectral Morph tool and I move this into the center here, that, oop, I don't want that. I want part of the other sound. I have it like morph from one to the other and back. Now you have this like kind of like hybrid wavetable. Goes. I just thought that was cool, you know? But it just goes to show you that there's a lot of interesting possibilities with phase plant and maybe some unique ones, specifically to phase plant. But most importantly, I think the thing to take away from this is that it's just a different process. And maybe looking at, you know, now that you see where things go, maybe this excites you to make a sound, you know? Moving on, let's talk about Massive X. That one is like really, I think, creating turbulence in the dubstep world for sure. If you ever hope to have any success making some cool stuff with a plugin, you have to remove your expectations and your entitlement and just focus on what does this thing do? What does it allow me to do? Not what do I want it to do and what do I wish it could do? Because if you approach any piece of software that way, you're just going to end up frustrated and you're not going to end up discovering some of the things it can do, you know? You're just going to be like, man, why doesn't it do this? Why doesn't it do that? I just want to put that out there because most of what I see on my timeline are people complaining about what they want it to be or what they thought it was going to be. Versus, I want to see more people showing me what it can do, you know? And I will point out some things that I think could be improved in Massive X. And I think they probably will. This synth's only been out for a week. So there's some things that are kind of obvious that I think are going to get updated. Like these envelope windows down here, for example. Like I hit the ADSR situation, ADR here. I'm not seeing any update to the image, which would be helpful. And actually, like, you know, the original Massive did that. I think those kinds of things are fair to point that out. And I would assume that they're going to fix that. And the same thing with these wavetable positions up here. As you can see, like when I morph from sine to square here, there's an update. But when I move the other filter mode parameters, I don't see an update. Those things would be really helpful, pretty obvious. And I will assume that Native Instruments is going to work on that. And if I'm sure they're going to do it, and now there's probably a fire under their ass to do it, because that's like the biggest thing I see people talking about. So yeah, now I got that little, spiel out of the way. Let me show you some stuff. I'm going to break this up into two sections. I'm going to talk about some of the new things it can do, and then I'm going to show you kind of like how I'm using it. So let's do this shit. All right, Massive X. Let's jump into it. Let's talk about signal flow. That's a big part of Massive X here. You got two init settings. One sets up a lot of the signal flow for you in kind of like a standard configuration. Really easy to understand, and then you can build your own, which is going to probably not look as neat, because I feel like if you're like me, when it comes to modular shit, you might be a little messy. Most everybody I know that plays around with modular stuff, their rig just looks like a mess. It looks like ramen noodles, kind of. And you can get into the ramen zone here with all your noodles, connecting your noodles here. You got oscillator 1. You got noodle going into here. Then you can put oscillator 2 here, turn it up. You got, now you got 2 saws going. Or saw on a square, maybe. Right. And then say you want to add like a filter. Well, you can do that by doing this. Connect one wire here, connect the other wire here, and you turn your filter on. Pretty simple. I really like the scream. It's called creak filter, but I know it's the scream. It sounds like the scream. You got this little sub menu. Slightly different models there. And then you can add your effects here. So like say I want to put like distortion. I can run that over here. And I'm just double clicking to disconnect wires. Like that. Different models. Pretty simple. And then more effects down here, B and C, you can on here. And out here, X, Y, and Z are mostly stereo effects like reverb and dimension expander, one of my favorites. So you can add a noise generator if you want. Maybe just a little bit. And maybe I decide double click before the filter. So there you have it. If I wanted to add feedback, I can do that here. Say I want to, put it right here. Yeah, and you can actually even add modulation sources to the routing, which is fun and really does some kind of like unexpected things. And you can use it to modulate phase and stuff, which is cool. So like, if I were to put one of these LFOs here, let's say I put on like saw or a sine, I can go back over here. What number was that? Yeah, 5. I can go back over here and look this up. So now, actually, I'm going to have to change the speed on it too. So if I turn the aux on. But it's worth like try plugging this into a bunch of different things, you know? So that's just with playing around with routing. You can get a lot of cool stuff going on. I thought it was worth just cracking through all this stuff real quick. Maybe you saw something that maybe this looks like a lot of fun. I actually have a lot of fun with this kind of shit. You just never know what you're going to get out of this. And actually, one other really cool thing you can do is you can actually use like a modulator as a oscillator. So like, let me use this one over here and use mod 2, plug it right in. So all this stuff now is disconnected and I just got modulator 2 connected over here. put LFO2 here. Now, when I press the button, you're just gonna hear like some clicking. I can turn this into oscillator mode. Like let's say I want a square wave. When it's on free mode, it's not going to change pitch unless I change the rate. The oscillator mode is pretty cool. And actually, like, you go back over here, if I hook up a filter in between, let me put this filter over here. There's some cool stuff you can do with the filter. Some of them have key tracking. But even, remember like when I had this in free mode, no matter what note I push, it's gonna have the same pitch. But now when I turn key tracking on here on this filter, and this made me smile, you know, just because it's weird. Bizarre. I don't know. Who knows? That's the fun of playing around with modular stuff, is you end up discovering these weird things that kind of almost feels like you're exploring like an alien planet or something. Like, does anybody even know how this stuff works? I think that's like the greatest feeling, is when you end up in this place where it feels like unexplored territory. And you quickly realize that actually, yeah, a lot of people know how it works, and a lot of really fun, interesting things you can do that sometimes intentionally are unpredictable and can create some, as a result, some really interesting sounds. So yeah, that's fun. I find myself noodling around with stuff like this and some of my outboard gear, and I'll look outside and it's dark out, and I'm like, damn, I just like teleported. That's how you know you're doing something that's worthwhile, in my opinion, at least. But anyway, let me move on to just like making a sound, and that'll give me an opportunity to show you how the rest of this stuff works and how the wavetables sound. We didn't even talk about wavetables yet, so let's get into that part now. All right, let's jump up to the wavetable section up here. Talk about Massive X a lot. We didn't even talk about any wavetables yet. So you can't load your own wavetables. That's something I noticed right away. But they do have a pretty big library of stuff to play around with. And they also have some really weird wavetables that I think are designed specifically for certain wavetable modes, like Banana and Gorilla kind of go together. For messing around with this, I like just started to get an idea of what Massive X sounds like. And like even just noticing that there's these like sub menus, you know. I actually like how that sounds. I really like this one wavetable in the monster section. This one. I don't know why. There's a lot of movement to it. Anyway, pretty cool. And yeah, typically I'll like start off by modulating this wavetable position, and I'll do that with the performer. And you can draw down here similar to like Serum. Actually, when you flip through the different performer situations here, you can see the outline of the one before it. You can see all the different ones. If I were to draw something in here, I can see it. When I flip over to here, see that guy back there? Pretty cool, helpful. You got a lot of stuff going on, kind of keep your mind a bunch of places at once. So if I click and drag, this is going to start to move. Oh, on here. And actually, if you don't set this up back here, this is just going to keep moving on into the future here. So if you hit key in one shot, if you click this little panel right here, now you got a retrigger in. If you want to switch from unidirectional to bipolar, you can do that over here. I click bipolar now. You'll see this thing update as well up here, depending on what mode it's on. I'm definitely like a less is more kind of guy when it comes to sound design. So a lot of times I'll just use one performer for a lot of parameters. I really like this creak mode. I think I already said that. I used it a lot back in the day, the scream filter. I think Skrillex did too. Both of us kind of like abused the scream filter. I remember one time Deadmau5 asked me, we were doing some like thing in Miami, some production thing, and it was like a live stream. And he was like, "What would you do if there was no scream filter?" And I said, "I would suck." That was back in like 2012. All I used on everything. It was nice to see it come back in creak form. But yeah, you can assign it here. I think the hardest part really with using Massive X is just, for me coming over from Serum, it's just getting a feel for everything. It takes some time, you know? I mean, I think once you get good at using a synth, you kind of like take for granted how many hours you have on it, you know? Kind of reminds me instantly when I open up Massive X, for example, that I'm just so much more comfortable in Serum because I've been using it for years, you know? I also like this leaks a little bit. Move it down a little bit. Maybe I want to put some distortion on this too. You can see here you got distortion coming before the filter. I don't know if I like that. I think I'm gonna put distortion over here. You can hear it so much better. Maybe do like a slight amount of mix on it so it comes in and out. That was pretty cool, man. I just really like how, just by playing with these bend modes, I think that's one of the things I'm starting to realize is that you can actually get a lot of action out of it. By like really subtly messing with this stuff in this area over here. The coolest thing too, I have to say as a sound designer, that myself, I've been trying to move away from using OTT on everything. It's not offered here, so I think it forces you to use restraint a bit more and find some different ways of kind of getting sounds to jump out of your speaker. Phase modulation. You'll remember this from from the original Massive, I used to do a lot of this kind of stuff. There's remember the modulation oscillator that was beneath? I would do a lot of this kind of stuff. So yeah, and of course, like if you wanted to go into OTT zone, if you're Ableton user, it's simple as throwing one on, right? Want to go into fucking rhythm zone, throw a flanger on. I'm not talking shit, but you know, the tropes are there if you need them, you know? Like a lot of times when I'll make a sound in here. As always, like I'll go through and I'll fucking bounce stuff to audio and stretch it out. Usually the sound I end up with doesn't sound very much like what comes out of the synth usually. So yeah, I mean obviously this stuff's usable, man. I like all this shit. I like how it almost has kind of like a granular feel to it. I want to save it. I'll call it Monkey Bass by Jake. Pretty cool, man. And obviously, like maybe. Sorry, I get caught in the tweak zone. I'm sorry. But you get it. You know, it's worth going through and playing around with all these different modes here because there's some really, really cool ones, especially for like making leads and stuff. Yeah, I've found like so many like things that just instantly made me jump to different ideas. Instant like spooky synth. If you were to put like reverb on this, actually kind of sounds like Zelda a little bit. Do 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 do. Old video game sounds, you know. If you turn it way up, that reminds me of like Chernobyl or something. You know what I'm talking about? It's like the ooh. That really sounds like Chernobyl. You know what I'm talking about? Like the decimeter thing they use to like find uranium or whatever. I don't fucking know. Sorry, I'm like my brain is fried. Anyway, you get it. All these modes are pretty cool. Like each one does something a little different and creates these cool textures. So I would suggest some of them you're gonna be familiar with from some other synths, but there's some weird eccentric ones for sure that do funny shit and like, you know, that's cool for making different textures, right? We don't want only the same tools we have available in other synths. Like that's the point, you know? And you don't want to necessarily throw OTT on everything. Like I just did that to prove a point. That it's there. Some of these crutches that we kind of like rely on, they're there for us. But the point of using a different synth is to get a different sound, I think. And as you can see, there's a lot of different ways to do that inside Massive X. So I hope something here piqued your interest. But let's move right along to the final round. Talk about Serum next. Okay, final round. X for Serum. This is my old friend. I love Serum, and I've been using Serum for so long that it's like an extension of my body at this point. I really am connected to Serum. With that being said, a kind of like unexpected side effect of playing with Phase Plant and Massive X is that I came back to my old friend with some stories to tell, so to speak, and some information to share. So I'm kind of like seeing Serum now in this different light, mostly when it comes to routing and sending signals around. Real quick, I'm just going to dial in a patch here and just show you my routine. Typically, I'll like load up a wavetable. I've spent a lot of time making my own wavetables recently. Like I said, I share some of these with Phase Plant as well. But I'll load up a wavetable. I'll route an LFO. I'll set it to trigger mode. I'll move this around a little bit. Dial it in a little bit more. I'll turn on the sub up here. I'll actually take the LFO to the level to get the bass moving with the sound. Triangle. Send it direct out, just so it bypasses all the effects and stuff. And I'll start adding some stereo effects. Maybe some distortion. Just a little bit. Warm it up a little bit. Yeah, add a little bit of compression. Actually flip it into OTT mode. Dial it back a little bit. Less is more with that stuff. Yeah, add a filter, why not? Maybe put like a multi high pass notch. Start modulating that. Maybe flip through some other wavetables. That sounds pretty cool. Sounds pretty cool. But the problem is that I did a lot of that stuff without even thinking, which is great when you're trying to go for speed. But like I said, one of the unexpected kind of consequences of me playing with these other synths and digging into them is that the way that they're laid out, I think, emphasizes a bit more of the signal flow. And I think just trying to figure out what's going on, your brain goes straight to, where's the signal going? And once you get familiar with a piece of software, I feel like you start jumping way far ahead, and you're just kind of like, I just want something dope, and I want something usable for this particular song, or I heard this track that this other person made, and I want to make something that sounds like that. And I think you get too focused on the end point and not what's happening in the moment. Maybe that's like an analogy for life. Something to think about. So yeah, I mean, if anything, messing around with these other synths, now that I'm coming back and visiting my old friend Serum, it's kind of put my priorities back into place. And it makes me realize that, man, there's still a lot of things I don't understand about Serum. And hey, there's some things I could do in Massive X and Phase Plant that I don't actually really know how to do them in Serum. Can I do them in Serum? And just to use one example, like if you remember back to with Phase Plant, right in the generator section, there were things like filters and distortion generators that, you know, I was using to modulate an oscillator. So first thing I did when I opened up Serum is I looked at the matrix window, which is super powerful and is going to be the key to some of this stuff. Can I maybe use the source, like one of these effects or something? And I couldn't find distortion. Like, we got distortion here. I was hoping maybe I could route this somehow to this. I got super excited. I realized that you can't. If there's a way to do it that somebody knows, like, let me know. But the workaround that I never would have thought to do until I messed around with it in Phase Plant was to use the noise section here. Because I'm thinking in my head the waveform of the distortion generator in Phase Plant, and it's just a bunch of noise, really. The distortion is just noise. So why not use the noise? And sure enough, like poking around enough, it's like cognitive dissonance. I always just go right to FM from B. That's the only kind of like wavetable mode that I use aside from these bend modes and stuff. And right down here, FM from noise. No shit. And sure enough, you can hear that noise coming in there. So, screwing around with some wavetables here. Maybe we can find one. That sounds really cool, actually. So it's like, mix that into the signal. It's like immediately I'm like, wow, why didn't I do that before? And I mean, what else can I do? I've noticed, like, just flipping around. It's like, not only can I use a noise as a modulating source, I can use a sample, like broken ceramic. What does this even sound like by itself? I mean, I don't think I would have ever thought to do that unless I messed around with Phase Plant. Not to say that no one would have ever thought to do that, but I wouldn't have thought to do that, you know? Now it's adding this weird, like, jitter mode, kind of similar to Massive X. If you remember when I was talking about Chernobyl. Just add in some weird, like, wobbly modulation there. I really like that noise stuff. AC hum. Just adding this edge. And it's like, what else can I, use? It shows up down here. Where is it? Noise oscillator should be here. You see it? Noise oscillator. There it is. And like, where else can I send that noise oscillator to? Well, why don't I try setting it to the filter cutoff? Maybe we can see it jitter around. Maybe slow it down. That's pretty cool. Listen to that. How would it sound with that ceramic thing? I wonder. I find it again. Yeah, broken ceramic. It's fucking weird. I don't know. So anyway, yeah. And you can see by the smile on my face, it's exciting. And I think a lot of times when we sit in front of a synth, we're just kind of like brain dead, just tweaking into the future and hoping. Sometimes just shooting in the dark. I think that's great if you got a smile on your face, and like, even if you don't have a smile on your face, but your brain is smiling, and there's some amount of mystery and unexplored territory. That's what keeps you excited, I think, about making music, is just kind of perpetually being in this state of, what does this do? What does this do? I wonder what happens if I do that. It's like the worst feeling to be in this place where you're kind of like slogging in the studio, and you can almost like picture yourself going to sleep at night and just kind of have this like existential dread surrounding your work. That sucks, man. It really is a horrible place to be, and it doesn't need to be that way. I think, let me add some more EQ action. I'll turn this into a go the other way with this guy. Then in the matrix window, we can like maybe mess around with some of this stuff a little bit. Everything kind of sounds interesting with that noise stuff going on. Filthy. I just like how it looks. Shaking around. Anyway, whatever. I'm starting to ramble a little bit. It's getting late. But the point is that the process of stepping outside your comfort zone is gonna enable you to find some new things and maybe find some stuff that other people looked over. And just go into the internet to figure out how you feel about something before you try it yourself, I think is a slippery slope. You don't want to end up into this situation where the only reason you're going to do anything is if you're going to get some kind of like result from it. And that goes for everything in life, you know, relationships with people, work, making sounds, you know, playing a video game. It doesn't matter what it is. If you have some kind of expectation and entitlement in the process, and you're just blindly following what other people are telling you to do, I think you're going to be pretty upset, generally speaking. You're going to be like, you know, generally kind of cynical about everything. And there's nothing like discovering something for yourself, you know? And that feeling of sharing something that you found with somebody else, that's part of that process, I think, of just being creative. So maybe somewhere in the midst of all this, something I said resonated, or maybe there's something I did inside one of these synths that you're going to go back and be like, okay, that sounded really sick, and I feel like that is something that's going to get me excited. Then that's the reason why I made this video, most importantly. Is just to remind everybody that trying out new things is supposed to be fun, and a big part of our job as a musician is to have fun. Don't forget that. That's why we all chose this path, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are kind of like, you know, in the middle of making a decision if music is for them. Is that something that's going to be like your plan A? It's not your plan B or C. It's going to be your main thing. Don't ever lose sight of that fact. And I think this is a really easy way to remind yourself, like, jump in to new ideas. Don't wait around for the reviews. Like, you see something new come out. I mean, obviously there isn't enough time in the day to check out every single thing that comes out, but you know, in these cases, like, these are developers that I think are really creative and have spent a lot of time trying to understand how people make music and also what makes it fun. So I think, you know, when I saw people kind of like hammering on Massive X in particular, I was like, man, come on. Most of us have like multiple native instrument plugins. Like, is it really as bad as people are making it out to be? Of course not. Like, there's plenty of cool shit you can make with Massive X, and maybe the unexpected little gift is that you can come back to some of your tools that you're used to using and see them in a new light. So thanks for checking out my video, and I wish you guys the best of luck fucking around with these synths. Let me know, man, like if there's things that you saw that helped you kind of come up with some ideas. Fucking drop me a message. If there's something you saw that I can build on, like if you're like, hey, in the Matrix, did you know you could do this? Like, let me know. I need to know. Okay? I'll keep making some videos too. Much respect, everybody. I'll talk to you soon. Peace.